Let's get that old eyesore down and focus on the dock.
Steady as she goes, perfect alignment.
She goes, perfect alignment.
This line right here doesn't match the new deed.
Wait, that means the boundary is completely wrong.
I never imagined that a quiet morning at my lake house would become the beginning of the biggest legal battle of my life. My name is Jack Sullivan, and for more than 15 years I had lived peacefully on the shores of Lake Cedar Ridge. My family loved this place because it was more than just a house. It was our home. Every weekend we enjoyed fishing from our private dock, watching the sunrise over the calm water, and spending time together away from the noise of the city. The dock had always been part of my property. It was clearly marked on every survey, every deed, and every county record. No one had ever questioned it. That changed on a Monday morning. As I walked down to the dock carrying my fishing gear, I stopped in my tracks. A brand new sign had been bolted to the entrance. It read Community Marina Property authorized by the Homeowners Association. At first I honestly thought someone had made a mistake. I looked around expecting to see a maintenance worker who could explain what had happened. Instead, the entire dock had been surrounded with fresh HOA warning signs as if it had always belonged to them. I stood there for a few moments trying to understand how this could happen. I had never received a letter. No email. No phone call. No meeting notice. Nothing. My private property had simply been relabeled as community property overnight. Most people would have marched straight to the HOA office and started an argument. I didn't. Experience had taught me that when property rights are involved, emotions solve nothing. Documents do. I quietly returned to my truck and drove directly to the county recorder's office. If someone had changed ownership records, I wanted to know immediately. The clerk recognized my name because I had visited years earlier when I purchased the property. She searched the database and after a few minutes looked at me with a puzzled expression. According to the county records, nothing had changed. My property lines were exactly the same as the day I bought the land. The dock was still listed as private property under my name. That was the moment I realized something important. The HOA had acted first and checked the facts later. I requested certified copies of every survey, every deed, and every easement connected to my property. The clerk disappeared into the archive room and returned with a thick folder filled with documents dating back almost 30 years. As I turned each page, a much larger story began to unfold. One faded survey immediately caught my attention. It showed not only my dock but also the only road leading to the community marina. A handwritten note from the original county surveyor explained that the road crossed private land and could only be used under a recorded agreement with the property owner. I read the sentence twice, then a third time. A small smile appeared on my face because I finally understood something the HOA clearly did not. They thought they had taken my dock. What they didn't realize was that the only legal road leading to their marina also depended on my property rights. At that moment, I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't interested in embarrassing anyone. I simply wanted the truth to be respected. If the HOA had made an honest mistake, I was willing to solve the problem peacefully. But if they refused to correct it, they were about to learn that property law is far more powerful than an HOA rulebook. I closed the folder, gathered every certified document, and walked out of the county office knowing this story was only beginning. I drove home that afternoon with a folder full of certified documents sitting on the passenger seat. The closer I looked at those old records, the more obvious it became that the HOA had never verified a single property line before claiming ownership of my dock. Every survey, every deed, and every county map pointed to the same conclusion. My family had legally owned that dock since the day I purchased the property. But there was something even more valuable hidden inside those documents. The original easement agreement was signed nearly 25 years before I bought the property. At the time, the previous owner had agreed to let residents use a narrow access road that crossed the land to reach the community marina. It was never a transfer of ownership. It was simply permission to travel across private property under specific conditions. One sentence immediately caught my attention. If the private property owner was denied peaceful use of their land, the easement could be suspended until the dispute was resolved. I leaned back in my chair and read those words several more times. It was a clause that almost nobody would notice unless they carefully studied the entire agreement. Somehow every HOA board over the years had completely ignored it. The next morning I called my attorney, David Cooper. We had worked together years earlier on a business contract and I trusted his judgment. When I arrived at his office, I placed the entire stack of documents on his desk without saying a word. David spent nearly an hour reviewing every page. The room remained completely silent except for the sound of papers turning. Finally, he closed the folder and smiled. "Jack," he said, "this is one of the clearest property cases I've seen in years." He explained that the HOA had made two serious mistakes. First, they had claimed ownership of private property without legal authority. Second, they had interfered with the very agreement that allowed residents to reach the marina. By attempting to control my dock, they had accidentally placed their own marina access at risk. David suggested that we give them one opportunity to correct the mistake peacefully. We prepared a formal legal notice requesting that the HOA remove every unauthorized sign, restore the property records within 10 days, and reimburse me for the damage caused by their actions. I agreed. I had no interest in creating unnecessary conflict. If they admitted the mistake, the entire situation could end quietly. 3 days later, the certified letter was delivered to the HOA office. Karen Brooks called an emergency board meeting that same afternoon. Instead of reviewing the county records, she confidently told the board that the HOA had done nothing wrong. She insisted that homeowners rarely challenged HOA decisions and claimed that I was simply trying to intimidate them with legal paperwork. Several board members looked uncertain, but no one questioned her decision. They voted to reject my request. That single vote changed everything. When David received their official response, he placed the letter on his desk and slowly shook his head. They'd just turned a simple correction into a major legal dispute. The following morning, we filed a petition with the county court requesting immediate protection of my property rights and an official review of the easement agreement. Within days, the court ordered an independent county survey. Professional surveyors arrived early on a bright summer morning carrying GPS equipment, historical maps, and measuring instruments. Neighbors gathered quietly along the shoreline, watching every step of the inspection. Karen stood nearby with several HOA board members, wearing a confident smile as if she already knew the outcome. The surveyors spent hours measuring every property corner, every boundary marker, and every recorded easement. They compared modern GPS coordinates with maps that had been filed decades earlier. Late that afternoon, the lead surveyor approached both parties with his preliminary findings. Every single measurement matched the original county survey. The dock belonged to me. The access road crossed my property. And the marina easement remained valid only if my ownership rights were respected. For the first time, Karen's confidence disappeared. The expressions on the faces of the board members changed almost instantly. They finally realized this wasn't just another HOA disagreement. It was a property rights case backed by decades of official county records. Standing quietly beside the lake, I looked across the calm water. I knew the hardest part of the journey was still ahead. Because the next battle wouldn't happen at the marina. It would happen inside a courtroom where facts mattered far more than opinions. The courtroom was already full before the hearing even began. Word had spread quickly throughout Lake Cedar Ridge. What started as a disagreement over a single boat dock had become one of the biggest property disputes the county had seen in years. Reporters stood outside the courthouse, neighbors filled the public gallery, and everyone wanted to know who was telling the truth. I wasn't nervous. I knew the facts were on my side. David leaned over and quietly said, "Today we let the documents do the talking." A few moments later, Judge William Carter entered the courtroom. Everyone stood as he took his seat behind the bench. The room became completely silent. The judge began by asking both sides to explain their positions. Karen's attorney stood first. He argued that the marina had always been maintained by the HOA and that the dock naturally belonged to the community because it was connected to the waterfront facilities. He spoke confidently for nearly 20 minutes, showing recent photographs and HOA maintenance records. When he finished, the judge nodded politely and turned toward our table. David stood up carrying a single leather folder. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "this case is not about assumptions. It's about ownership." He walked toward the evidence table and placed 3 certified county surveys in front of the judge. Each survey had been created years apart by different licensed surveyors. Every one of them showed exactly the same property boundaries. The dock belonged to my property. The access road crossed my land. And the marina operated under a recorded easement. The judge carefully examined every document. Then David introduced another piece of evidence that nobody expected. He displayed aerial photographs taken almost 30 years earlier. The photographs clearly showed the dock already standing exactly where it is today, long before the current HOA board was ever elected. Several people sitting behind Karen quietly whispered to each other. Their expressions began to change. Next, the county surveyor was called to testify. He explained in simple language how modern GPS measurements perfectly matched the original survey markers placed decades ago. There is no conflict between the old survey and the new survey, he explained. They are identical. Karen's attorney attempted to challenge the measurements, but every answer only strengthened the surveyor's conclusion. Finally, the judge looked toward Karen. Did the HOA verify these county records before placing ownership signs on the property? Karen hesitated. For the first time since the case began, she looked uncertain. She admitted that the board had relied on internal HOA maps instead of requesting official county records. The courtroom became completely silent. That single sentence changed the atmosphere. Several homeowners sitting in the audience slowly shook their heads. Even some HOA board members looked surprised. They had trusted the information they had been given. David wasn't finished. He walked back to the evidence table and carefully unfolded another document that had remained untouched until that moment. It was the original easement agreement. Unlike the copies everyone had seen before, this version still carried the handwritten notes made by the county attorney nearly 25 years earlier. David highlighted one paragraph and handed it to the judge. The judge adjusted his glasses and began reading silently. As the seconds passed, the entire courtroom waited. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed. The agreement clearly stated that if the property owner was prevented from peacefully enjoying their land, the easement allowing access to the marina could be suspended until the matter was legally resolved. Karen slowly lowered her head. She finally understood what had happened. By trying to take control of my private dock, the HOA had accidentally placed the entire marina's legal access in jeopardy. No one had expected such a simple decision to create such enormous consequences. The judge announced a short recess before continuing the hearing. As people slowly walked into the hallway, reporters rushed to interview attorneys and homeowners. David smiled at me. "We're not finished yet," he said. "The strongest evidence is still waiting." I looked at him with curiosity. What else could possibly be stronger than this? He tapped the leather folder resting under his arm. "You'll see." At that moment, I had no idea that the next witness would reveal a forgotten document that had remained hidden inside the county archives for more than 25 years. A document that would completely change the future of the HOA forever. The courtroom was already full before the hearing even began. Word had spread quickly throughout Lake Cedar Ridge. What started as a disagreement over a single boat dock had become one of the biggest property disputes the county had seen in years. Reporters stood outside the courthouse, neighbors filled the public gallery, and everyone wanted to know who was telling the truth. I wasn't nervous. I knew the facts were on my side. David leaned over and quietly said, "Today we let the documents do the talking." A few moments later, Judge William Carter entered the courtroom. Everyone stood as he took his seat behind the bench. The room became completely silent. The judge began by asking both sides to explain their positions. Karen's attorney stood first. He argued that the marina had always been maintained by the HOA and that the dock naturally belonged to the community because it was connected to the waterfront facilities. He spoke confidently for nearly 20 minutes, showing recent photographs and HOA maintenance records. When he finished, the judge nodded politely and turned toward our table. David stood up carrying a single leather folder. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "this case is not about assumptions. It's about ownership." He walked toward the evidence table and placed 3 certified county surveys in front of the judge. Each survey had been created years apart by different licensed surveyors. Every one of them showed exactly the same property boundaries. The dock belonged to my property. The access road crossed my land. And the marina operated under a recorded easement. The judge carefully examined every document. Then David introduced another piece of evidence that nobody expected. He displayed aerial photographs taken almost 30 years earlier. The photographs clearly showed the dock already standing exactly where it is today, long before the current HOA board was ever elected. Several people sitting behind Karen quietly whispered to each other. Their expressions began to change. Next, the county surveyor was called to testify. He explained in simple language how modern GPS measurements perfectly matched the original survey markers placed decades ago. "There is no conflict between the old survey and the new survey," he explained. "They are identical." Karen's attorney attempted to challenge the measurements, but every answer only strengthened the surveyor's conclusion. Finally, the judge looked toward Karen. "Did the HOA verify these county records before placing ownership signs on the property?" Karen hesitated. For the first time since the case began, she looked uncertain. She admitted that the board had relied on internal HOA maps instead of requesting official county records. The courtroom became completely silent. That single sentence changed the atmosphere. Several homeowners sitting in the audience slowly shook their heads. Even some HOA board members looked surprised. They had trusted the information they had been given. David wasn't finished. He walked back to the evidence table and carefully unfolded another document that had remained untouched until that moment. It was the original easement agreement. Unlike the copies everyone had seen before, this version still carried the handwritten notes made by the county attorney nearly 25 years earlier. David highlighted one paragraph and handed it to the judge. The judge adjusted his glasses and began reading silently. As the seconds passed, the entire courtroom waited. When he finally looked up, his expression had changed. The agreement clearly stated that if the property owner was prevented from peacefully enjoying their land, the easement allowing access to the marina could be suspended until the matter was legally resolved. Karen slowly lowered her head. She finally understood what had happened. By trying to take control of my private dock, the HOA had accidentally placed the entire marina's legal access in jeopardy. No one had expected such a simple decision to create such enormous consequences. The judge announced a short recess before continuing the hearing. As people slowly walked into the hallway, reporters rushed to interview attorneys and homeowners. David smiled at me. "We're not finished yet," he said. "The strongest evidence is still waiting." I looked at him with curiosity. What else could possibly be stronger than this? He tapped the leather folder resting under his arm. "You'll see." At that moment, I had no idea that the next witness would reveal a forgotten document that had remained hidden inside the county archives for more than 25 years. A document that would completely change the future of the HOA forever. The next morning, the courthouse was more crowded than it had been the day before. Local news stations had arrived early, and nearly every seat inside the courtroom was filled. Homeowners from neighboring communities had come to watch because everyone wanted to know how this unusual dispute would end. I walked into the courtroom with David carrying nothing more than a single folder. There was nothing left to prove. Every document had already been verified. Every survey had been confirmed. Now the decision rested entirely with the court. Karen entered a few minutes later. She looked completely different from the confident HOA president who had first claimed my property. The confidence was gone. She quietly took her seat beside her attorney and avoided looking in my direction. A few moments later, Judge Carter entered the courtroom. Everyone stood. After everyone sat down again, the judge opened a thick file containing every piece of evidence presented during the hearing. He looked around the courtroom before speaking. "This case has never been about a disagreement between neighbors," he began. "It has always been about property rights and the responsibility of organizations to verify facts before taking action." The room was completely silent. The judge continued. "The evidence clearly establishes that Mr. Jack Sullivan is the lawful owner of the private boat dock." He paused briefly before turning another page. "The evidence also confirms that the roadway leading to the community marina remains private property subject to a recorded easement." Several homeowners quietly nodded. Judge Carter continued reading. "The Homeowners Association acted without verifying county records and improperly represented privately owned property as community property." Karen slowly lowered her head. The judge looked directly toward the HOA board. "No homeowners association possesses authority to transfer ownership of private property without legal process." Those words echoed throughout the courtroom. Then came the decision everyone had been waiting for. The court orders the immediate removal of every unauthorized HOA sign placed upon Mr. Sullivan's property. I took a slow breath. But the ruling wasn't over. The HOA shall restore all public records and community maps to accurately reflect the official county survey. David smiled quietly beside me. Again, the judge continued. "The HOA shall reimburse Mr. Sullivan for his reasonable legal expenses and survey costs resulting from this dispute." Several board members exchanged worried glances. Then Judge Carter reached the final section of the ruling. "Until the HOA fully complies with this order and respects the existing easement agreement, Mr. Sullivan shall retain the legal right to regulate access across his privately owned roadway according to county law." The courtroom became completely silent. Every homeowner immediately understood what that meant. The marina itself had not been taken away, but access to it could no longer be controlled by the HOA. Instead, the HOA would have to work cooperatively with the very person whose rights they had ignored. The judge closed the case file. "This matter is concluded." The wooden gavel struck once. The hearing was over. For a few seconds no one moved. Then the room slowly filled with quiet conversations. Several homeowners walked toward me and thanked me for standing up for property rights. One elderly resident shook my hand and said, "This wasn't just your victory. It protected every homeowner here. Those words meant more to me than the court ruling itself. Outside the courthouse, reporters surrounded us. One journalist asked the question everyone wanted answered. "Mr. Sullivan, now that you've won, are you going to close the road permanently?" I smiled. I had already made my decision long before the hearing ended. "I never wanted to keep anyone away from the lake," I replied. "I only wanted the law to be respected." The reporters became quiet. "I'll reopen the road as soon as the HOA follows the court's order. Because a real community isn't built through arguments. It's built through fairness." For the first time since this entire conflict began, I saw Karen walking toward me. She stopped only a few feet away. For several moments she didn't speak. Finally she extended her hand. "Mr. Sullivan, I owe you an apology. I should have verified the facts before making decisions that affected your property." There was complete silence. I looked at her hand. Then I shook it. "Let's make sure this community never goes through something like this again." Karen nodded. "I promise." As she walked away, I looked toward the lake in the distance. The legal battle was finally over. But something told me that the real story was only beginning. As the days passed, the atmosphere around Lake Cedar Ridge slowly began to change. The temporary barriers were removed. The unnecessary warning signs disappeared. Survey markers were replaced with permanent property monuments, and for the first time in months, the neighborhood looked peaceful again. The HOA board held its first public meeting after the court's decision. This time, every seat in the room was occupied. Homeowners wanted answers. Karen stood in front of everyone, took a deep breath, and spoke honestly. "I made a mistake." The room became completely silent. I believed I was protecting the community, but I acted before verifying the facts. That decision affected a homeowner who had done nothing wrong. For the first time in years, no one interrupted her. She continued. "From today forward, every property dispute will require official county verification before any HOA action is taken." The audience slowly began to applaud. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. But it was genuine. The community had learned an important lesson. A week later, Karen personally came to my house carrying a folder. Inside was a newly signed community agreement. Every incorrect HOA record had been corrected. Every unauthorized notice had been removed. The HOA officially recognized my ownership of the dock, the roadway, and every property line exactly as recorded by the county. She looked at me and smiled. "I hope we can start over." I smiled back. "I never wanted enemies. I only wanted fairness." She nodded. "And you were right." A few days later, I unlocked the gate leading to the marina. Families slowly returned. Children ran toward the lake carrying fishing poles. Parents unloaded kayaks. Neighbors greeted each other with smiles instead of arguments. For the first time in months, laughter echoed across the water instead of legal discussions. Emma walked beside me as we stood on the end of our dock watching the sunset. She looked across the lake and quietly asked, "Was it worth everything we went through?" I smiled. It wasn't about winning. It was about protecting something that mattered. She squeezed my hand. "And you did." As the sun slowly disappeared beyond the mountains, golden light reflected across the calm water. Boats drifted peacefully through the marina. Children laughed along the shoreline. Neighbors waved to one another from their docks. The community had finally become what it should have been from the beginning. Not a place controlled by fear. Not a place filled with unnecessary conflict. But a neighborhood built on respect, honesty, and fairness. Several months later, the HOA elections took place. Many homeowners voted for a completely new board that promised transparency, accountability, and respect for property rights. Karen chose not to run again. Instead, she thanked the community for giving her the opportunity to learn from her mistakes. As for me, life returned to normal. Every Saturday morning, I walked down to my dock with a cup of coffee, watched the sunrise over Lake Cedar Ridge, and appreciated the quiet that had finally returned. Sometimes, neighbors would stop by to chat. Sometimes, children asked if they could fish from the dock. My answer was almost always the same. Of course. Because sharing something by choice feels completely different from having it taken away. Looking back, I realized something important. The greatest victory wasn't winning a lawsuit. It wasn't proving the HOA wrong. It wasn't even protecting my property. The greatest victory was reminding an entire community that the law exists to protect everyone equally. No matter how large an organization becomes, no matter how much authority someone believes they have, respect will always matter more than power. Honesty will always outlast pride. And the truth will always find its way to the surface. As the camera slowly rises above the peaceful lake, the final image shows families enjoying the marina together, children laughing on the shoreline, boats moving gently across the water, and the golden sunset reflecting over Lake Cedar Ridge. Peace had returned, justice had been served, and this time, everyone won.